Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Full Compass Full Access webinar series, where we bring you industry experts to talk about the subjects that you are asking about. So you have your choice to pick the subjects, and we pick out the industry expert to talk about it. My name is Jim Ripp. I'm the manager of technical training and sales development here at Full Compass Systems. I'm the moderator today, and today we have Rob Ferguson coming to us with Electro-Voice to talk about installed audio products. So a couple of housekeeping issues here real quick. We do have a question feature that you can use. If you look at your control bar there, go ahead and ask the questions that you may have for Rob anytime during the presentation. At the end of the presentation, I will then ask those to Rob, and we'll get those all answered as best we can. A recording of this presentation will be made available for future viewing for you if you have to duck out early. Or if you would like to share it with someone that you feel that they should see it, you have that capability. And once again, this is where you get to pick the subjects that we bring to you. We have a survey, a whopping 2-question survey at the end of our webinar here. That if you fill that out, you get a chance to let us know what you would like to hear about next. So, quick introduction here. Let's bring Rob online. Rob, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Welcome, and it's good to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, so I'm looking through all your accolades here, and I always pick out one that I'm interested in. I would like to hear a little bit more about you have 3 different degrees: music performance, audio engineering, and business. How about that music performance? What instrument? Is it education? What were you?
Well, I think like many of us in the audio industry, I started off as a young musician, and when I got to college, I was like, well, you know what I want to do? I want to learn more about my instrument. So I went and studied music performance with the intent to be a performer, right? So I was a double bass primary, so I primarily studied upright bass, and that's my primary instrument. I play a couple other instruments, but that's the first one I gravitated towards as a bass player.
Oh, that's awesome. I was a music performance with piano, but I also played bass. I studied music education and love playing the bass. I still play the bass today as well. A little bit easier than piano.
Yeah, I find it the same. I actually struggled quite a bit. Nobody told me when I was younger that, hey, if you study music in college, you got to play piano and learn how to play it. So I spent more time, I think, playing functional piano than practicing my pieces on bass. So
that sounds par for the course there. So I'm going to turn the presentership over to you. And then again, everybody, if you could, go ahead and ask your questions anytime during the presentation. If there's an urgent question, I might just jump in and ask Rob those questions. So Rob, it is all yours. I'm going to mute myself and you take it away.
Perfect. Can everyone see my screen? I think so.
Yep, I can see it. It looks good.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you all again for joining us. Certainly I know a lot of us are still working from home a bit, so I appreciate you dedicating some time to spend it with us today. But anyways, what I did want to talk about is I know we're focusing a little bit on Electro-Voice and as well as Dynacord here in terms of brands and portfolio. But one thing I did want to touch on real quick is Bosch, the family of brands that actually Electro-Voice and Dynacord are a part of. And when I usually tell people that I work for Bosch, if they're a non-audio person or they don't know anything about EV, if I just say I work for Bosch, they're often like, oh, like the power tools or the dishwasher. I often get that question, but overall, Bosch is a very large company with interest in several different business sectors. So there's over 400,000 Bosch associates worldwide, and a good chunk of those are focused on R&D and engineering. We do really focus on engineering and research and development. So you'll find that a lot of associates that work here at Bosch are focused on engineering specifically. But there are 4 sectors really. There's mobility solutions, which is primarily automotive, which we find quite large here in North America. Pretty much every vehicle on the road has some kind of Bosch component inside it. We have industrial technology, energy and building technology, and that's kind of where communications and our audio solutions kind of fit in. And then of course, consumer goods, like I mentioned, the power tools and dishwashers. Another interesting thing about Bosch overall is that the majority stakeholder actually is a charitable foundation. So about 92% of the ownership for Bosch is a charitable foundation. So all of we are a private company, so we're not publicly traded or anything like that. So we are our own bank, but most of the profits that we do make do actually go right back into the communities that we serve. So that's something that I'm very proud of as a Bosch employee. So let's talk a little bit about Bosch Building Technologies overall. So this is where kind of EV and Dynacord do sit in within the family of brands. But on the left-hand side, you'll see kind of our security solutions. We're in video, intrusion, access control, as well as some software and services associated with that. Bosch also makes fire alarm systems as well as public address, which also is an audio solution available. As we look on the right-hand side, this is kind of the Bosch Communications portfolio. Things that are Bosch branded will be our public address and mass notification products, some commercial loudspeakers to tie in with them, some conferencing products. Those will all be Bosch branded. The Electro-Voice brand or the EV brand, which you might be familiar with, we've got a long history here of over 90 years, but that's our premium loudspeaker and microphone brand. So that's really going to be our premium transducers will be Electro-Voice branded. Dynacord, a brand that we've reintroduced into the market here, is going to be all of our amplifiers, DSP, and electronics. RTS you might be familiar with, more on the intercom side, certainly for two-wire applications, but really popular in the broadcast sector. We do also make Telex aviation headsets, as well as some Telex dispatch equipment for emergency communications as well. So that's the overall portfolio. Today, we're going to focus on Electro-Voice and Dynacord specifically as it relates to installation. And I'll start off with kind of our commercial audio offering. So if you're looking more for that background music solution, whether that's 70 volt or maybe low impedance, but you're looking for atmosphere for an environment or a space and really music production, or music reproduction is the focus. A great line to look at would be the EVID range. So it could be anything from retail, restaurants, hospitality, back of house in a particular area. But there are certainly several different installations that you could put EVID loudspeakers in. Now there's a wide variety of form factors available. They almost all come in black and white, and of course they are very aesthetically pleasing, and they'll blend right in with the architecture, so they're heard but not seen necessarily. So there's a wide range available. Certainly we do have some surface mount loudspeakers, pendant, ceiling speakers, some premium ceiling, as well as some subwoofers to mix and match as well. So one thing to keep in mind with the EVID range is they all are tuned quite similarly, so I can mix and match these products. So depending on whatever environment I'm in, if I need to use surface mount in certain areas or pendants because there's no drop tile ceiling, you can certainly do that. But we do have a wide range of solutions for almost every form factor or installation environment that you can think of, and you can mix and match all of these based on whatever you need. So to highlight a couple of these loudspeakers, one really popular one that we found is the newer low profile, the 4-inch low profile ceiling model. It's got pretty impressive low frequency extension for it being just a low profile. A lot of it does have to do with the bezel size, which I'll talk about in just a moment, but it is under 4 inches in mounting depth. So we're finding more and more things in the ceiling, right? And we're trying to avoid those. So this specific model is very shallow. And one other unique thing we've done as a manufacturer that most manufacturers haven't realized or recognized this yet is that other low profiles in the market, you actually still have to run the wiring from the top of the can rather than from the side. So it is never truly the depth of the actual can for some of these other manufacturers. For us, it is truly under 4 inches because the wiring does come from the side. And of course, we do have a low impedance bypass of the 4-inch low profile. Another thing to mention here with the EVID ceiling range specifically is another unique thing we've done as a manufacturer is the 8-inch low profile, the 6.5-inch, and the 4-inch low profile ceiling models all share the exact same bezel size. So that means as a contractor or installer, all I have to worry about is cutting one hole, right? Regardless of what I'm mixing and matching. And to the end user, I mean, as far as aesthetics are concerned, they look exactly the same. You might want to use one speaker over the other depending on what the environment is. But we can mix and match them and you won't know the difference just by looking up in the ceiling. Now, the other thing to keep in mind as an installer or contractor is, usually I do know what's going to be in the ceiling and we've checked it out, we've checked the plans, but you might run into something a little unexpected. And if that's the case, you might have already cut a hole for the 8-inch, you went to put in the 8-inch can and you realize you've got an obstruction and you're not going to be able to mount that Typically with most manufacturers, you already cut a large hole. If you move to the low profile with a smaller bezel size, you're in a bit of a situation. You have a larger hole than where you can mount your ceiling speaker, and that's never fun. So at least with the EVID range, you don't have to worry about that too much. If you cut the hole, you realize, oh no, I can't use the 8-inch. You can easily swap it out for the 6.5-inch or the 4-inch low profile and really achieve the mounting height that you need. And then, of course, the pendant. The pendant has been really popular. It's a 6.5-inch two-way full range pendant it's got some pretty impressive low frequency extension. A lot of installations, they're not even always using a subwoofer, and it does have excellent audio quality. It is designed for indoor and outdoor use, so there's a terminal cover if I want to put it in a patio area or somewhere where maybe someday it might be raining sideways and we want to protect the terminal. And then, of course, they all do come with the transformer on board, and of course I can bypass that if I just want to run it at 8 ohms. So, and of course they come in black and white. So one other thing we wanted to focus on today was EVID-S, one of our newer surface mounts. Certainly it's been in the market for a little while now, and you might be familiar with like the dual football or the dual woofer. Even sometimes people call it the football or the fencing mask or the kidney bean. So the EVID-S is a little bit more of a traditional footprint. And I do want to dive a little bit into the EVID-S family. So there is a 4-inch, 5.25, and an 8-inch full range models. There is an extreme weather model, which I'll talk a little bit later, in the 5.25. And then, of course, we do have subwoofers available, the dual 10-inch as well as the 12-inch corner mount. Overall, in terms of price and performance, for those of you who are familiar with the EVID range, this is kind of where we're looking in terms of a good, better, best scenario in terms of performance, and then of course in price. So that's how the portfolio looks without EVID-S. EVID-S kind of fits right in this medium area right here. So if we're looking for something that's maybe a step up in price and performance, you might want to look at the traditional EVID. However, if the budget meets and these do sound great out of the box, you might want to look at EVID-S. So one really unique key feature here is the pre-wired smart mount system that comes with EVID-S. This is very unique. No other manufacturer offers this. So it does come with an integrated level bubble, which you can see there at the top. I think we kind of borrowed this from our security counterparts on the intrusion side with intrusion detectors, but there is an integrated level bubble, so I don't have to worry about lining it up too much. There's actually a paint shield, which I can cover this ahead of time. So if I'm in a new construction and I'm going to run the pre-wire ahead of time, I put the bracket up already. I can put a paint shield on, they come in and paint, and then the next day when they call me like, hey, we need this up ASAP, it's as simple as sliding this on, and it's one set screw. It's quite fast and simple to install. I don't know of a surface mount speaker that goes up quicker than this, so you're saving yourself some time and some energy getting these up in the air. So something that I think is a very unique feature that I would definitely look at. Of course, do have kind of an invisible look, right, or invisible sound, right? They're not super apparent. You don't see a big giant box hanging out when you look at EVID-S. It is a kind of a traditional look, and of course, we do have a wide choice here that it can blend right in with the architecture. So if we want black or white, we can do that. And in terms of indoor and outdoor ratings, all of the EVID-S models, standard EVID-S models, come IP54. And I did mention that extreme weather model, which comes in a 5.25, is available in IP65. Now that one just doesn't feature the smart mount. It does just come with the U bracket, but we did that to meet the IP65 standard, and it has been very popular for environments where we feel it's a little more extreme weather, whether it's we just want to ensure that it's going to last a long time, but it could be a very humid environment, or it could be somewhere where we really feel like it's going to get some direct exposure constantly. So, but anyways, it is a great weather rating, impressive so compared to the rest of the market. Even just the standard IP54 is a great weatherized rating. Of course, I mentioned this already. They do have matched acoustics with the rest of the EVID family, so I do have some flexibility. I can mix and match with the rest of the EVID family to really complete my installation. So EVID-S might not meet all the needs since it's just a surface mount loudspeaker, but if I want to use some other loudspeakers within the EVID range, I don't have to worry about them sounding radically different. And of course, it's very competitive in price. I find that it's compared to the rest of our competition that's out there, it is a very attractive price, a great sounding box with all the features and installation needs that you need. But of course, I think it fits right in with the family as kind of our mid-tier EVID surface mount brand. And then, of course, something to keep in mind here is they do often are priced and ship as pairs. You'll find with the full range models that's the case. And then the subs do come individually. But just keep that in mind when you're looking at EVID. Sometimes you might be thinking we're twice as expensive, but a lot of times these do ship and are sold as a pair. So moving more over into performance audio, so more foreground music. I'll focus a little bit on EV innovation. So certainly the EVIDs are great for background music on the cusp of foreground, but if we're going to have a live band or we really need some more directivity or control or overall higher SPL, you're probably looking at a bigger, more powerful box, and you might be looking at the EV Innovation family. So it's kind of our fixed install integrator series. They all come with rotatable waveguides. They all come in black and white, and many of them do come in weatherized models. So there's a wide range to pick from. Again, like EVIDs, they are really meant to be used together, right? So and often in installations, you'll see a combination of these products together because that's what's required for the venue or the space, right? So we've got EVU at the top here, kind of our ultra compact, or sometimes I think of it as under balcony because it's often used that way because of the footprint. But it comes in a 6.5 inch all the way up to a dual 8. The step above that would be EVC, kind of our compact front-loaded system. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but it comes in an 8-inch up to a 15-inch, and there is the variable intensity loudspeaker, which I will talk about in just a moment. We have EVF, kind of our staple front load line. You see them all the time. It's probably the most the most common loudspeaker that you see out of the entire family that you see in an installation, but it comes in a 12-inch and a 15-inch model, and there's several coverage patterns within the range. So, if you're looking for something that has some extreme flexibility and a lot of choices in coverage patterns, I would look at EVF. We have EVH for our horn-loaded line, an incredibly naturally sounding horn-loaded device. So when I do need some directivity, when I do need some control, especially if I'm in a reverberant space, EVH might be the right solution for you. And then, of course, at the bottom, we do have some subwoofers that you can mix and match as well. And then something to keep in mind is there are a lot of installation accessories that are available. So if I want to create arrays or, whether that's some clusters horizontally or vertically, I can do that with EVF and EVH and combine them with subwoofers. So keep that in mind. So let's talk a little bit about EVC, which is something that we wanted to highlight a little bit today, kind of our compact loudspeaker for fixed installation, right? So if I'm already looking at EVID-S, this would probably be the step above, or maybe it would be the main system in whatever venue I'm in, but there's quite a few options within the range, but it's still pretty simple to keep in mind. So there's the EVC 1082, that's a two-way 8-inch, and it comes in two coverage patterns, which we found were the most common, 90 by 60 and 100 by 100. We have the EVC 1122, which is a two-way 12-inch full range that comes in a 60 by 45 or a 90 by 55. We have the EVC 1152, which comes in a 60 by 45 or a 90 by 55. We also have the EVC 1122 VI, which is the variable intensity loudspeaker, which is a two-way 12-inch full range loudspeaker that evenly covers a rectangular audience area. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, and that explains kind of the funky shape of that loudspeaker you see in the center. And then, of course, we do have a matching subwoofer, the EVC 1181S, which is a single 18-inch subwoofer. So in terms of EVC, it's probably the newest addition out of all of the loudspeakers within the EV Innovation family, and it really falls in performance and size between EVU and EVF, as you can kind of see in the table. So EVU, really 6-inch to a dual 8. For EVC, it's an 8-inch to a 15. There's two coverage configurations for most of the loudspeakers. We've got a little bit more sensitivity, SPL, pretty much the same power handling. They do come in passive, and then of course it comes in indoor, and then there's also a PI model for some sheltered outdoor applications. So if you feel like you need more coverage patterns, or we want something that's full on fiberglass, or you want to biamp the loudspeaker, you need a little bit more SPL, you might want to look at the EVF range, which is kind of the step up in price and performance there. And there's 6 coverage patterns with the EVF line. Another unique thing that we've done with the EVC family too is since we've introduced it in with the EV Innovation line with EVF, EVU, as well as EVH, we can actually mix and match some of the existing EV Innovation accessories. So like the NL4 connector plate, single gland nut cover, the TK150 input transformer, the eyebolt kit. All of these things can be used with the EVC family in addition to EVF or EVH. Another thing that's nice about EVC is that it is rated for indoor and outdoor. So there's 2 levels of weatherization. There's the EV coat, which is IP44, right? Perfect for indoor applications. And then the PI version, which is IP55. So that adds a stainless steel grill, some hydrophobic cloth, comes with a dual gland nut cover, and then suitable for covered outdoor applications. So certainly I would recommend the PI version as long as there's some kind of shelter or overhang and it's not getting directly rained on. If you find that it's a full outdoor exposure environment where it's going to get all sorts of moisture all over the box, I'd recommend looking at a fiberglass model, and that's specifically in the EVF range. So something to just keep in mind. So kind of mentioned this already, but we picked the waveguide patterns for EVC that were most common, which especially if you look at the EVF range, it's very similar. Those were the most common patterns. And then of course they are rotatable. So if I want to mount it horizontally or I want a little bit of a different coverage pattern, you do have the ability to rotate the waveguides. So, and there are some mounting accessories specifically for EVC. There's the Omni type bracket, which you see right there to the farthest left. You have the U bracket. There's one for the 8-inch and then one for the 12 and 15. There's also a U bracket for the VI system, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. There's M10 suspension points on all of the models. So there are eyeball kits, and something to keep in mind, unlike some of the other EV Innovation loudspeakers, it does not ship with any eyebolts or any mounting accessories. So just keep that in mind. If you are getting an EVC loudspeaker, just make sure that you're either adding the eyeball kit, U bracket, or kind of that wall bracket, that Omni mount type bracket. So one other unique thing about the EVC loudspeakers is the ability to have automatic saturation compensation, or what we often abbreviate as ASC here. So in typical 70 or 100 volt applications, transformers are used to maximize energy transfer from amplifier to loudspeaker, right? So we're minimizing signal loss over long cable runs, and we're building an isolated speaker network. But there are certainly some disadvantages there. Transformers that can pass the full audio range are expensive, large, and heavy, and all transformers will saturate when driven hard enough, especially at lower frequencies. So as a transformer core begins to saturate, the electrical impedance drops, and when driven hard enough, a transformer is effectively a short circuit. So what most manufacturers do is they recommend a system high-pass filter, usually a part of their system DSP, to protect the amplifiers from low transformer impedance. So when multiple loudspeakers are connected, the high-pass filter cutoff frequency typically needs to be raised. And then that trade-off there is that we're losing some low-end response to ensure there's a stable system operation and we're protecting the electronics. So to give kind of a visual interpretation of that, without ASC, it is sometimes necessary to roll off some of those lower frequencies. So if we're using something that doesn't have ASC, you're probably looking at 100 hertz cutoff, and you're really missing a huge chunk of those important bass frequencies. Whereas with ASC, you don't have to worry about that as much because it compensates for that, and we can often go with a 50 hertz cutoff there. So the EVC, with the EVC line, the ASC circuit is included in all of the EVC models. So it includes a variable cutoff high-pass filter in each of the loudspeakers. So it senses the current level and adjusts the filter only enough to keep the transformer from saturating. And we maintain low frequency extension while keeping the impedance in a safe range for the amplifier, even when multiple EVC speakers are connected. So this is standard on all the EVC models, and it automatically engages when you add the TK150 transformer, which is an additional accessory. So just make sure you add that if you want to use this in a 70 or 100 volt application. And it's almost impossible to hear the difference between the speaker that has a transformer installed and one that doesn't. One of my favorite demos to do is we like to bring out the EVC 1181S, right? The 18-inch, and we'll demo that in a system where we'll put the TK150s on the actual subwoofer versus the non-subwoofer, or versus the subwoofer that doesn't, the low impedance one. And I can't audibly tell the difference between the two, and our customers never can. So it's a fun Pepsi challenge kind of thing to challenge people with. But if you find yourself in an environment where I really don't need a lot of zones, I really want to cut down on my amplifier count, I really encourage you to take a look at EVC and use the TK150 in conjunction with that to really preserve some of that saturation compensation. So let's talk about the variable intensity technology that you find in the variable intensity loudspeaker. Now, as you noticed in some of the images earlier and in this one, the EVC 1122 VI is a very unique looking loudspeaker. And really, the goal of this was to create a single loudspeaker or a single source that covers a rectangular listening area. And you can find these in a variety of applications, whether this is a lecture hall of types, an auditorium, a meeting room, certainly in house of worship, bars and clubs, and we're even finding it being very popular in airport and transit terminals. And the problem with most of these installations is the sound level changes with distance, so it's too loud in the front, too soft in the rear. And you'll find with a traditional point source loudspeaker that you have about 10 to 11 dB of variation across the listening area, which isn't ideal, right? So it's typically we're going to have to add more loudspeakers to compensate for that loss. So the variation is reduced to 6 to 8 dB across the listening plane with the EVC-VI, so that the front of the listening area is similar in level to the middle section. So the woofer is aimed at the rear of the audience using the reduced off-axis response to even out the front to back levels. So, and this is what the variable intensity loudspeaker looks like underneath. I know it looks a little funky, but there's a reason for it. And let's talk a little bit about that waveguide, right? It's very unique looking, right? It's got some narrow dispersion to the rear of the listening area and then some wide dispersion to the front of the listening area. Right, so it's a unique compound waveguide that projects both short throw and long throw coverage with a single device, and it does sound quite musical.
Hey, Rob, I got a quick question for you coming from
Sure.
Alan. With all these charts and everything, I see readily available, the frequency response is available online for each of the speakers. Rob's question is, do you have performance graphs specifically including the beaming like you're talking about right now, the coverage area? Are those available?
Yeah, we can get those for you. A lot of the information we find on the data sheet is typically what people are looking for, and we certainly do have ease data for all of our loudspeakers as well. But if you don't find any information on the data sheet, certainly we can get that to you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
That's a good question. So like I kind of mentioned here, the VI approach reduces level differences to 6 to 8 dB across most of the listening area, and levels in the front are similar to levels in the middle. And here's kind of a graphic interpretation of that. But it's a very unique loudspeaker, and it's actually, I think, really simple to design as well as a designer, right? When we take a look at, you know, how do I kind of design this? It's really based on how high it's going to be. So the coverage depends entirely on the mounting height and the angle. So the coverage begins at 0.6 times the height, falls off at 3 times the height, and is 2 times the height over the distance. So by rounding 0.6 up to 1, we can easily approximate coverage area based on the mounted height at the bottom rear of the loudspeaker as 3, 2, 1. So it's really just based, call it the 3, 2, 1 rule. It's really just based on how high we're going to mount the loudspeaker based on what coverage we're going to have. So really simple to install this guy. So we talked a little bit about Electro-Voice loudspeakers, and there are plenty of Electro-Voice loudspeakers we didn't talk about already today, but certainly we focused a little bit on EVIDs, EVID-S specifically, EV Innovation, EVC specifically. Of course, we have plenty of line arrays and other portable loudspeakers, as well as some other staples within the lines that maybe don't fit in any of these categories we've talked today. But if you are out there looking at an EV loudspeaker, I highly encourage you to use our electronics as well. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but you know, since we do kind of create our own transformers and we focus a lot on creating the loudspeakers, one of the nice things about being both a loudspeaker manufacturer and electronics manufacturer is we know more about our loudspeakers than some other companies might about their own. So one of the unique things with using our own electronics is we really know the parameters of the loudspeakers that we're operating and vice versa. So I do encourage you to use the Dynacord portfolio if you're using Electro-Voice loudspeakers. And we do have dedicated presets for almost every single loudspeaker out there, including FIR drive for almost every single loudspeaker that Electro-Voice makes within the Dynacord platform. So let's talk a little bit about Dynacord overall. You might be familiar with the Electro-Voice amplifiers of the past, and we've kind of made a strategic change here over the past couple of years. So everything going forward that's going to be amplifiers or electronics within our loudspeaker range, our loudspeaker system range is going to be Dynacord branded. Anything that's a loudspeaker or microphone will be Electro-Voice branded. So just keep that in mind that Dynacord is a brand that's a part of the Electro-Voice family. Up here at the top, we have our C&L series 2-channel amplifiers, which have some professional DSP preloaded into them. If you're familiar with the EV amps, you're probably thinking of the CPS 2 channels or the Q series. amplifiers. These are kind of an enhancement of those with preloaded DSP. I'll talk a little bit more about those. Step above that would be IPX, kind of our multi-channel Dante networked option today. Incredibly energy efficient as well. It does utilize a unique technology called EcoRail, where for like background music applications or light duty applications, the amplifier will actually operate on a lower voltage rail, significantly consuming less power. And we find on average that it's about 50% of the energy bills being saved there as opposed to some competitor electronics out there. And then when we do need the full output of the amplifier, it seamlessly switches to that higher voltage rail, utilizing the full potential of the amplifier. So it's a technology that's very unique. Most manufacturers don't have, but it's a significant way to save money on your energy bill. We want to be eco-friendly there. But of course, IPX does offer not only some advanced reliability, but some superior audio quality with 96K and 118 dB SNR. So they are the leading standard out of all the amplifiers we have. And then of course we have TGX, definitely more focused on the live or mobile market, right? So there's some 4-channel options. And then of course there's a turnkey system rack. So if we do find ourselves in an application where we want to roll a system in and out quite simply, we do have a turnkey system rack with power distro and switches already pre-configured for you. We will be introducing a new DSP system actually next week called MXE5, so stay tuned for that. But we will be launching a whole series of DSP systems and matrix mixed engines called MXE, so keep your eye out for that. And of course, we do have some easy software control. We have Mark for the CNL amplifiers, and then of course we have SonicU, which you can use for all the amplifiers, including CNL, which is a very easy and intuitive way to pre-configure all of these amplifiers. So let's talk a little bit about the LNC series amplifiers. So they've been in the market for a little while. They've been incredibly popular, but really they're quite similar under the hood. L is definitely more for live applications. C is more for install applications. I think C is contractor. That's the way that I keep it in mind. But one thing that they both have is they have fully integrated DSP. So typically you'll find that a lot of amplifiers at this price point either don't have DSP or don't have this level of DSP. You can load full-on FIR presets into these amplifiers, and it's the most powerful DSP set at this price point that we found in the market. There's some intuitive user interface that you can use. There's Mark, which you can use, but there's also SonicU, which I do encourage you to use, and we do have some extensive system control if you use SonicU. And then some high power and solid reliability. So we can get up to 3,600 watts, depending on what we're looking at here. And this is all rated at 4 ohms here, and I think we're pretty conservative in our ratings. But one of the other things that's unique about Dynacord that I don't find with other manufacturers, they might publish a rating at a lower impedance like 2 ohms, but they often can't operate that low. It is possible with these amplifiers to operate at lower impedances, specifically 2 ohms. There's a lot of other ones, especially at this price point. I wouldn't recommend going lower than 4. So that's something to keep in mind. And certainly with our heritage and touring, we do have some tour grade limiting and protection within these amplifiers, even when we're having some unreliable power sources. And of course, you have some flexibility. So these amplifiers are equipped with direct drive, so I can use for 70 or 100 volt applications. So I can use these for both low impedance and for high impedance applications, depending on what I need. As you can probably guess, the differences between L and C series is, L is more for live. So we've got front panel control, and the power switch is right there on the front panel. It's XLR and NL4 connectors. For C series, more focused on installations, right? So we have control and security lockout on the front panel. We have a rear panel power switch, remote time turn on, power standby mode, some Phoenix connectors, and some GPIOs so that you could actually switch between maybe 2 presets. Maybe during the day you have this one preset just for background music, and at night it's more of a live performance for a venue. And then of course, they are incredibly affordable. Now, what you see here is just MSRP. right? So this is maximum list price. They are quite affordable considering the feature set that you're getting in there. So certainly I encourage you to use LNC series or even other amplifiers, IPX, if you're using an Electro-Voice loudspeaker system. Obviously they'll be optimized. We have the right presets for it. But certainly if you're just planning to use this with maybe an existing retrofit or something like that, you can use the C-series amplifiers and they're at an incredible price. So that's pretty much all I had for today. I guess I'll turn it back over to Jim to see if we got any questions we can answer for you guys.
Yeah, I do have a question. Well, first off, I'd like to make a statement. I have personally used in a club performing with the piano. They covered the club with the dual woofer, the kidney bean or the football as you called it,
Yeah.
the 6.2s, and they are amazing. The sound that got out of there, reproducing both vocally and the piano, were wonderful. So those are outstanding. If anybody was wondering about those. So we have a question here. So the EVID-S series comes with that smart mount. Is that smart mount available separately, or do you have to wait for it with the speaker?
Okay, no, that's a great question. So, EVID-S does ship with those smart mount brackets, and they actually sit right on top of the packaging, so you could take them out and install them really quickly. But I get your point. If you were doing some pre-construction ahead of time, you're running pre-wire. I don't need the loudspeakers. I just need to mount the bracket. You can actually buy the smart mount brackets separately. So you can buy those separately as a kit, just take those on site, install those, and then when you do order the loudspeakers, you can just repurpose those smart mount brackets for your next installation. So no, that's an excellent question, but you can buy the smart mount bracket kit separately if you want to do pre-construction ahead of time.
Great. I have a question from John here, and I'm assuming John is probably a contractor or installer here. Can you remotely access the C-series amplifiers?
Yes, you can. So there's a couple different ways you could do that. Certainly, in terms of software, we have the Mark software, which I've talked about, but there's also SonicQ that's now available with all of our system electronics. So whether you're using C-Series, L, IPX, TGX, or even the new DSP that's coming out, SonicQ is a newer sound system software that you can do remote control, operation, and configuration of the system. So you can certainly use something like SonicQ, and that's definitely obviously optimized for the Dynacord electronics. So that's what I would use for remote configuration, control, and kind of monitoring your system.
Excellent. I guess this one is not really a question, but it's a clarification. Just want to make this point here. The EVID-S, you mentioned sells in pairs. Does that include subwoofers as well, or are they a class of their own?
Yeah, and I think we can be a little confusing, honestly, if I'm being honest with everybody. But most of our full range loudspeakers do ship in pairs. So when you're looking at them, or you're interested in ordering a package, they're usually typically priced in packaged in pairs. So there's two in a box. So whether that's EVID-S, the ceiling models, or the footballs, or the fencing mask kidney bean, as we were just talking about, they all ship in pairs. The subwoofers typically do ship individually. Some of them don't, but just make sure you double check. So I think the ceiling sub ships in a pair, but all the surface mount subs ship individually. And then the 112.2, the 12-inch full range ceiling speaker does ship individually because it's so big. But no, that's a good question. Most of them do ship in pairs, but it's either the subs or the larger full range loudspeakers do ship individually. But it's always a great clarification. I know when you're looking, if you're looking on the Full Compass website or you're poking around there, I know it does say pairs, but sometimes it's easy to gloss over that, and we don't want to look twice as expensive than we really are. So you do get two with each pair.
Yes, so keep that in mind with the pricing.
Yeah.
That's all we have for questions. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. It's this lot. I've personal experience, and you guys have come in here and trained a lot of our sales team on these, and everybody is astounded. And I have to say that smart mount is one of the things that really catches a lot of people's eyes. How quickly and easily it is to install one of those onto the wall and then pop the speaker on there. Very quick. So thank you for giving us this presentation today. It's been a pleasure. I see we have no more questions, so I guess we're going to wrap things up. So thank you, Rob.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jim, and thank you guys all for attending. Certainly, if you got questions or anything, feel free to reach out to your staff over there at Full Compass. I know they're very knowledgeable on the EV loudspeakers and the portfolio there. But if you are interested in just poking around yourself, you can certainly go on the Electro-Voice or Dynacord website and get some information. And then, of course, reach out to your Full Compass rep to get some more information on ordering. But thanks again, everybody, for joining today.
Yes, and it always happens to me. You get done with a webinar like this, and then all of a sudden a question pops into your head. If you guys do get a question, I'll give you my email address. It's JRIPP@fullcompass.com. It's jrip@fullcompass.com. And again, thanks, Rob, and thanks everybody for attending. That's the end of our webinar for today. We'll see you next time.